When I was able to put these 5 steps into place in my leadership, it led to some of the highest performing teams I've ever been on. If I use those 5 steps, it allows Jesus to clean me up so I'm not management waste.
Oh, I love that.
Not wasting the career, the
Yeah.
opportunities, the relationships.
Yes.
God has each one of us uniquely positioned wherever we are in order for Him to carry out His plan in and
Yes.
through us as Christians.
Absolutely.
And so I just found for me, it worked when I focused on those 5 steps, those 5 principles. That enabled me to really be more in tune with what God wanted me to do, where I was serving others.
Yeah.
Most people think leadership is all about being at the top of the pyramid and everyone else serving you.
Yeah.
And that's not what Jesus taught.
Exactly. Well, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us on Backstage with Randy Phillips. I am Randy Phillips, and I am joined by an incredible guest today, Larry O'Donnell. He just wrote this book, Management Waste. We're going to jump into it, talk about a little bit of this, but this guy is a rock star in every arena of life. And Larry, thank you for being here.
I'm so honored to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
My goodness, your resume is mind-boggling. But first of all, as a husband, you have an amazing wife. Is it
No
Dare?
doubt. Dare. That's correct.
D-A-R-E.
That's her given name, just like I dare you.
I dare you to marry me.
Yes,
And you
she
did.
She fits her name.
Now, how long married?
We have been married 43 years.
Oh, that's outstanding.
First met at the University of Texas.
Oh, and just another reason to love you, Larry.
And she is.
You're a Longhorn.
We both are.
Yes, love that. You
I
got
do
two
have
beautiful kids.
2 kids.
Yes.
I do have a great story of how we met.
Oh, you do? Let's hear it.
Why? I was a water skier and featured myself as being pretty good.
Really?
And so we used to ski all the time, almost every weekend, a group of us. And so I saw Dare on campus, and I figured out how to get in touch with her. And I said, hey, we go out water skiing on Saturday morning early. Would you like to go? And she goes, oh, I love to water ski. Yeah. I said, we go really early because we get out there before there are any other boats, before the
it's
sun comes
calm.
up. It's very smooth. She goes, perfect. Anyway, we get out there, and we say, you're the new person, so you get to go first. She goes, oh, I'm not ready. She said, Larry, you go first. I said, great. So I get back there. I do my thing on my slalom. I'm cutting. I'm thinking, oh, man, this is great. She's going to be impressed. I let go, and they come pick me up. She goes, oh, it looks like you've been skiing a long time. I said, oh, yeah, we come out here every weekend. I've been skiing on, Lake Travis since the 60s. And she goes, oh, that's great. And I said, well, are you ready? She goes, yeah, I'm ready now. She jumps in. I go, you want to ski on 1 ski or 2? She goes, I'll go on 1. And I said, do you want to ski on my, custom slalom here? Or do you want these old wood, they were all wood skis back then. She goes, no, give me yours. And if I can't get up, you can throw me another one and I'll go on 2. Well, I go, oh, that doesn't make any sense. Anyway, she gets right up. And then she's just kind of hanging behind the boat, not going anywhere. And all of a sudden, she looks around and she takes off, and she's touching her shoulder on every cut, one-handed, like she's going around, buoys of a race course. And everybody on the boat goes, oh, man, we're in trouble now. She lets go. We pick her up, and I go, well, it looks like you've been skiing a little bit yourself. She goes, well, I thought you knew I skied for the University of Texas water ski team. I go, oh, okay. So you see, she fits her name, Dare.
Oh, I love that.
And back then, there were 3 events. You slalomed, you trick ski, did little tricks and what have you, or you went off the jump for distance. And I said, slalom must be your event. I mean, that was impressive. She goes, actually, no, that's my worst. My best event is going off the jump for distance. So I fell in love that day.
Yeah,
I knew I was going to marry her. I said, that girl just put me down good, and she's something else. So,
I love that. Dare. What
she
a great
fits her name.
Never have I heard that. That's awesome. I'm going to come back to your kids here in a minute. Waste Management President and COO.
Correct.
$45 billion company?
Yeah, but when I got there, it's a lot bigger now than it was when I got there. We had probably about 65,000 employees when I got there.
Wait. 65,000 employees.
Yes.
Okay.
Around the world.
That's a city.
They had averaged buying a company a day for the year and a half before I got there. So they were
they were buying a company a day?
Averaged. For the 18 months before I got there, it averaged buying a new company every day. So they had acquired something like 1,200 companies all around the world. Nothing had been put together. The accounting was all messed up. It was the largest blow up in corporate history before I went over there.
My goodness.
So it was like Enron or WorldCom
yeah,
it was a mess. They fired everybody, and I was dumb enough to go over there and help them try to get it turned around.
You turned it around.
Well, we put together an incredible team. It wasn't just me. We put together an unbelievable team. Many of them are still there. I got a whole nother story. The guy who wrote the foreword in my book there, be sure you read that because he's the current CEO.
Oh, he is.
And I talk about him in the book, and he talks about me in the foreword. But he started with us as a financial analyst and came to me one day and said, Larry, I want to move into operations. And I go, well, that's a lot different than what you're doing. You know, because in operations, you have to really engage with the people and, get them motivated to do what you think needs to be done and get input. There's a lot of communication and motivation and that kind of stuff. You can't just sit in your office. Not that that's wrong. I mean, what he was doing, I said, you are fabulous at what you do. Going through the financial statements, figuring out numbers, but it's a whole different skill set. He goes, I know. I'm weak. I don't know how to do that, but I know you can teach me if you're willing.
My goodness.
Anyway, that guy, he was one of the most coachable people I've ever seen. I've moved him and his poor family all around the country to some of the worst places. Oh, man. And he just excelled and kept moving up, and eventually came back and was CFO, and now he's CEO.
My goodness.
So great story. Management. Great story, and I'm so proud of him, as well as others. I really enjoyed throughout my career pouring into people like that and just seeing them take off and just blossom.
Well done, Larry. I'm so looking forward to reading this book. I just love all the play on words, not waste management, but management waste. Clever.
Yes, I used a little play on words.
Yeah, you did 5 steps to clean up the mess. Clever. And then the acronym CLEAN.
CLEAN, those are the 5 principles that I sort of boiled everything down to. I have to keep things simple so I can remember them.
Me too.
And as I went through the Bible, trying to understand the way Jesus taught servant leadership, I sort of distilled all that down to these 5 steps, which I came up with the acronym so I could remember it clean. And so the way I try to remember it is if I'd use these 5 steps, and it's not that I'm a master of servant leadership. Look, I've messed up so many times, and that's what that book's is all about, the mistakes I made and what I learned from them, so other people can, not make the same mistakes I made. But what I did find is when I was able to put these 5 steps into place in my leadership and working with colleagues and what have you, it led to some of the highest performing teams I've ever been on. And so the clean, if I use those 5 steps, it allows Jesus to clean me up so I'm not management waste.
Oh, I love that.
Not wasting the career, the opportunities, the relationships. Yes. God has each one of us uniquely positioned wherever we are in order for him to carry out his plan in and through us as Christians.
Absolutely.
And so I just found for me it worked when I focused on those 5 steps, those 5 principles. That enabled me to really be more in tune with what God wanted me to do, where I was serving others as opposed to, most people think leadership is all about being at the top of the pyramid and everyone else serving you.
Yep.
And that's not what Jesus taught.
Exactly. Well, I want to jump into some of these principles in a second. You also graduated from Dallas Theological Seminary.
Yes, I did.
What
an honor.
What point of life did you go get your master's degree?
It was after my business career.
Okay.
I had thought about going to seminary when I was at UT.
Okay.
And I met Dare and then, fell in love and stayed on the business track. And I really didn't give it that much thought. I always viewed God wanted me in the businesses I was in. My career, about every 10 years, I had a major career redo. I practiced law for 10 years. Then I decided I liked business better than practicing law. So then I moved over to the oil field and worked for Baker Hughes for almost 10 years. Then they recruited me to Waste Management. I was there for about 10 and a half years. And from there, I went and started up an oil field service company,
My goodness.
which we grew and is now part of a public company. So about every 10 years, I had a major redo. But each move, I felt God was calling me to go do something different.
Yes.
And I always viewed the businesses, wherever I was, that was the ministry that God had put me in.
I love that.
And so when I retired from my business career, God put on my heart, okay, kind of like you put me off in college, but now you're going. So I drove every week up to Dallas.
You drove up there?
Every week. And took me about 3.5 years to get through it, but I loved every minute of it.
I know.
I couldn't get enough of it.
Love those people. When COVID hit, I just kind of was doing it. A lot of us were just introspective. What do I wish I would have done by now?
Mm-hmm.
And one of those things was get my master's degree. And so, at 60.
Yeah.
I went and got my master's degree. I was the oldest one.
I was the oldest one in my classes, and it was so funny. The first day of class each semester, because I was driving up there, so I'd usually be there early. And I'd get in there, and the students would come in, or I'd walk in, and there'd already be some in there, and they'd get real quiet.
They thought
the professor's there. I go, I'm not the professor. I'm just a student,
Relax,
just like you.
Relax.
It's okay.
All right, so there's so many reasons to love you, Larry. Great husband, great father, seminarian, Dallas Theological, president and COO of Waste Management, a Longhorn,
Yes.
an attorney,
Not really anymore. I mean, I still have my license, but I don't practice.
and you were the very first undercover boss on the television series Undercover Boss. I'm so fascinated by that. I watched it.
You have fun laughing at me?
Yes, I didn't know you, but I loved it, and you did a great job. I want to come back to the book, but before I do that, how did Undercover Boss find you, or did you find them?
The way it came about is we had moved Waste Management along. We were on the uptick. I mean, we were doing pretty well when they showed up.
Okay.
And they were looking for, it was a reality TV group, and they were looking for a big public company to do the first pilot episode. And apparently everybody was telling them no. And when they brought it, the way it came to us is our reputation was so messed up when I first got over there from all the accounting scandals that had happened, and people lost a lot of money. I mean, the stock had fallen from $65 a share to about $13 a share when I got there. It's over $200 a share today.
My
but
goodness.
there were a lot of unhappy people. The employees were unhappy. Everybody was unhappy.
Yeah.
And so we worked with one of the larger PR firms out in California to try to, help rebrand us and help us improve our reputation.
Right.
And this reality TV group, they were smart. They called them because I think they represent maybe half the Fortune 200 companies. And they said, would any of your clients be interested in doing this series or this show? And they said, we know just the company and just the guy, but he isn't going to want to do it because he doesn't like, calling attention to himself. the reason they thought I'd be good for it is because I was already doing what they wanted to have happen in the show. In other words, I was already going out at 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, going out talking to drivers, for instance,
Wow.
asking them what's working, what's not, how can we make your job better for you.
Yeah.
And then I'd pick out a driver and I'd go work the back of the truck all day. And
My
people
goodness.
thought I was crazy. They'd go, Larry, why would we pay you this much and you go out and throw trash on the back of the truck all day?
You're the highest paid trash man in the world.
Yeah, and I said, let me tell you something. I learned more about what's working and what's not working
Oh,
in this company
Yeah.
by doing that than sitting in my ivory office,
Yeah.
in downtown Houston. And so I did it all the time, and they were intrigued by that. When they heard that, the reality TV group,
yeah.
they weren't sure how it was all going to
Mm-hmm.
come together. They had a good premise, and that is most companies, management doesn't have a clue what the frontline employees are
Right.
having to deal with each and
Yes.
every day.
Yes.
Well, I routinely was out there all over the place with them because I wanted to see. In fact, when we were building the new model, nothing had been put together. They had acquired all these companies. It was a roll-up. And we had to build an operating model that there'd be one good way to work in the company. And the way we built that is I went out and I got the employees to tell me, what
Yeah.
works and what doesn't. I got their input.
That's great.
And what was amazing from doing that, it got around the company. And what I found is it built tremendous trust
Yes.
because they saw management was listening to them,
Yes.
asking for their input,
Yes.
implementing their ideas.
Yes.
I would write a newsletter and I would give credit to, okay, we're going to now do this initiative. And this is where I discovered it.
Yeah.
It was working with this person at this location. They're doing great things with it. And so this is what we're now going to roll out next to improve. So it wasn't about, they figured out it wasn't about me. It was about all of us
Yes.
succeeding together.
Love
And
that.
it just had a tremendous impact on the culture. So anyway, that's a long answer to your story or your question.
Yeah.
But that's how they found me. And
So
when they
you
first came, I
disguised-
said no.
So the premise is you disguise yourself.
I didn't disguise myself
didn't?
then. When I was going out,
No, back then, but for the show you did.
it's not like it is now. Now they give them
I
disguises
know
and
it.
what have you. They gave me nothing. All they would tell me the night before, they'd say, you're going to have this job tomorrow. And so I knew what uniform to wear. And what I did is I let my beard grow out. And back then I wore contacts. I didn't wear glasses. So
Okay.
I wore my glasses. And then,
Yeah.
of course, then you put on the safety glasses and
Yeah.
a hard hat. And,
Right.
and I'd ask really stupid questions
Yeah.
all day to
Funny.
throw them off.
Funny.
And so none of the frontline people,
They didn't know.
they didn't figure it out. The management at those locations, every time they figured it out
They
because
knew.
they knew me. And I told the
But the workers didn't know.
workers never knew.
And so we ask questions about management and ask questions about how do you feel the company's treating you? What do you think?
Right.
Did the answers you got back, did they hurt you? Did they?
One really did.
Yeah.
And it's on the show. It was, that happened to be, it was, her name's Janice, and she was a driver. She was driving, I was working the back of her truck, and she kept talking about how, management in Houston was making them do this new program and all the problems with it. She was talking about me. She didn't know it, but everything she was saying, and the knife kept turning, and it was me. And
So did you take away from that, this initiative is not working?
it wasn't communicated properly.
Oh.
It was a good initiative.
Okay.
And once I explained that, once we explained what we were doing afterwards, not during
Yeah,
the show,
yeah.
I was just listening.
Yeah.
In fact, during the reveal, at the end, you revealed your true identity
I know.
to everybody.
I love that.
And I go, you know who you were talking about all day who was so
Was it
bad?
me?
It was me. She goes, oh, no. I said, oh, yes,
Yeah,
it
it
was.
would be.
And I said, you were right. You
So
were
should-
absolutely right.
Should the experience with Undercover Boss was just incredible. It helped me ask questions of my own employees. What do you think we're doing well? What do you think is not going well? How can we improve? So it helped me. You helped me.
I appreciate that. And you know where I got that? I
No.
got that from my dad.
Oh,
I grew up in a construction company. We had
Okay.
a family construction company. And at the earliest I can remember, even have memory, I was working in our family business, either stocking the shelves at the hardware store, but eventually, you know, I was a plumber, framing carpenter, electrician, every summer, every
You did it
Christmas.
all.
Yeah. And eventually I started being able to run crews. And I was the youngest guy, and the last thing I wanted anyone to say, it bugged me to death, is when people go, oh, that's the boss's son. I didn't want to be known as the boss's
Right.
son. I wanted to be known as the hardest working guy. Everybody wanted me on their team, you know?
Yes.
Well, then when I got into a role of, you know, leading some of these teams, I knew I was younger than everybody, and they were a lot more experienced. And what my dad told me, he said, here's what your job is. You got to make their job easier. Ask them what's getting in the way of them doing their best job and fix it. Or if they could change anything to make what we do to service our customer better, what would it be? And then go do it. You know, so
That's
I
great.
learned that early on in my career, and it served me in my childhood, and it
Yeah.
served me well throughout my career.
Man, your dad was an incredible example for you.
Yes.
As my dad was
He
for
was.
me. From the Undercover Boss episode, did you go back and make changes in the company? Was there implementations you made that were different? Did you change stuff based upon what you found the employees saying?
Absolutely. That's why I went out there. You know, it wasn't just from Undercover Boss. It was every time I went out and worked with the employees, I came back with things that I knew we needed to do something different
Yeah.
or communicate different or change how we were going about it. And then I always told whoever it was that, you know, led me to understand the problem, I kept them informed. And then that would get around. Sometimes they'd suggest things and we couldn't
Yeah,
do that.
just can't
Or
do
we
it.
couldn't do it right then.
Right.
We had other things that we needed to do first.
Yeah.
I mean, when I got there, the place was on fire. So we couldn't fight all the fires. And I would tell them, okay, that's a good idea. I can't get to it right now.
Yeah.
I'm not blowing you off.
Yeah.
I think what I found, it's worse to go out and ask and do nothing.
True.
So if you're going to ask, you better have a follow-up.
Yes.
And either tell them, okay, this is what we're going to do with it,
Yeah.
or, you know, let them know and let them be involved in helping roll it out, because it comes out, you get a lot of buy-in from the others when it's coming from the
Yeah.
rank and file rather than, oh, this Larry,
Yeah.
he's an oil field guy. He doesn't know anything
Yeah.
about our business. What the heck is he coming
Yeah.
up with now?
Is that philosophy that you have, that your dad taught you, servant leadership?
I didn't know it as that at
But that's
the time,
what it is.
but that's what it is.
And servant
No doubt
leadership
about it.
is what?
Well, it comes out of, for me, the real the verses in the Bible that I think speak to it the best are like Matthew 20,
Yeah.
and that's where James and John are asking to be placed into a high position when Jesus ascends to his kingdom.
Yeah.
They want to be seated on his right and left hand.
Yeah.
And Jesus calls all of them
Yeah.
together and says, look, he basically says, the Gentiles use the top-down leadership model. I'm paraphrasing. This
Yeah.
isn't in the Bible, but if you go back and look at it, he says they lord it over them.
Yeah, they do.
Okay, and
Top down.
that's top down, you know. Right after that, he goes, "I do not want you leading that way.
Bottom up.
Bottom up."
Okay.
He said, He said, if you want to be first, you got to be a slave.
Yeah.
Okay, so he wants you serving others, and he
Yeah.
says, "I came to serve and not to be served." Okay, here's the King of the universe,
Yeah.
God, saying he did not come to be served, but to serve others.
I know.
Man, that really resonated with me.
Oh.
And so it was when I saw that, I really started digging through the Bible, looking for other verses that talked about leadership, servant leadership, and there's a lot
You
in there.
found them.
Well, they're in that book.
I know it. I'm digging in.
And so
And Jesus was a pretty good model.
he was an awesome model.
He calls them all together, puts a towel around his waist.
Exactly.
They thought, you know, it was going to be, it should have been 12 servants and one Lord, but the truth is it was 12 lords and only one who knew anything about serving.
And if you look, they were constantly arguing
I
about
know.
who's the greatest. And Jesus
Is
would
that
keep...
just a human thing that we have?
I
How
think
can
it
I
is.
get there? How can I get up there?
I
And
think
who do I have to
everybody-
walk over to get to it?
And look, I was that way. Even though I was a Christian, I didn't discover this just overnight. There were plenty of times throughout my career where I was not the ideal servant leader. I mean, I was focused on myself. How can I get ahead? You know, I didn't have empathy for others. I didn't realize it until a real tragedy happened with my daughter. That
I want to come back to that.
yeah, that really God taught me empathy.
Is that that was the epiphany?
catalyst.
That was the tipping point.
Yes.
Okay. Let's talk about, is it Lenley?
Lenley, that's correct.
Lenley, beautiful daughter.
Joy.
And tell us about her story.
She was born totally normal. When we got home from the hospital, my wife and I noticed after her feeding, her stomach really bothered her. Like she was not a happy camper.
Okay.
And so Dare called her mom, and her mom said, Dare, just put her on a soy formula. You were the same way.
Okay.
You were intolerant to lactose as an infant. She'll be fine. Well, we did that, and she was fine. We took her in for her 2-month checkup with the pediatrician, and he said, yeah, that's got to be what it is, but let's just make sure. I'm going to send you down to the medical center in Houston. That's where we were living at the time. And let's have some tests run. Let's just make sure there's not something else going on. So we get down there, and we got with a doctor who had never done the test on a little 2-month-old infant. He had only done it on adults. And he used an instrument that blew a bunch of air into my daughter's stomach, and she threw up and aspirated. And was without oxygen for an extended period of time. Long story short, she was in intensive care for about 4 months, and they finally said, you might want to just take her home. She isn't going to make it. She can die peacefully at home. There's nothing more we can do for her. And we took her home, bought a funeral plot, and prepared for her death. I was really angry at God.
Yes.
I didn't lose my faith. I was a Christian.
Yeah.
But I just kept telling God, this is not fair.
No.
And I start reading him like he doesn't know, telling him my spiritual resume. You know, I've been teaching Bible studies since high school and college. We go to church, you know, but like he doesn't know.
Yeah.
Okay?
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh, really?
Is that right?
And
thank you, Larry, for filling in the blank.
Exactly. And finally, I was reading... I was doing my morning reading one morning, and I was in the Gospel of John, chapter 9. You know the story. Jesus is walking with some of his disciples, and they come upon a blind man.
Yeah.
And they let me stop. My anger had turned into guilt because I was beginning to think, okay, there must be a reason for this. And Lenley's too young to have done anything to deserve this.
Right.
I must have done. There's some sin that I have done. So anyway. Pick up with the story in John chapter 9. He's walking with the disciples. They say, who sinned to cause his blindness? Was it his sin or his parents? And Jesus said, and I'm going, that's my question. Okay, here comes my answer. Jesus says, it wasn't either one of their sin. It was so my glory could be shown through them, through this blind man. And I mean, it was like a weight lifted off my heart.
So that was the moment.
That was the moment. I said, and in fact, I'm getting chills right now thinking about it. I said, okay, I get this. It's not about my plan. It's about your plan.
That's right.
And your plan's different than my plan.
Yes.
All my life, I've been able to outwork anybody. I didn't realize how self-absorbed and how focused on me I was. And through all this with my daughter, I learned that it's really about caring for others. That's what's important. I didn't realize I didn't have empathy. I knew as a Christian, I thought I cared about others, but I was really self-focused. I was messed up. And God used that terrible tragedy to teach me empathy. And now my daughter's 39. She lives at a facility for special needs adults. Lives and works there, and she's the joy of my life. probably FaceTimes me 40 times a day.
Oh, how precious.
Who else has a 40-year-old daughter that FaceTimes them even once a day? Okay, I'm blessed. I am blessed.
My daughter don't want to talk to me.
Right, I know. So
how did you? This is how you handled it. You went to Scripture. You vented. You received what you feel like the Lord wanted you to hear.
Yes.
How did your wife handle it?
Back when she was in intensive care, it was different than intensive care is today. It was just one big room, like huge big room. There might have been 40 infants in this big room, all lined up against the wall.
My goodness.
And then they'd kick us out because one of them would pass away. 1 to 2 would pass away every day. And so they closed down the ICU, and you'd have to go out. We'd sleep on the floor out in the lobby.
What?
We just slept on the floor. And so she was a lot better. People, our friends and family, they were so nice. People would come up there, bring us food, take care. She was a lot better about interacting with them and, communicating with me. I just wanted to crawl into a hole.
Man.
I was the typical male, where's my cave?
Yeah.
I got to sort through this in quiet by myself.
To process it.
Yes.
So where did your wife go to seek solace, peace, to get comfort? Was it?
It was her
faith?
friends, and we talked. Yes, it was definitely her faith. I mean,
Okay.
we both prayed.
Yeah.
We prayed all day, every day.
Oh.
All day, every day. So definitely her faith. It wasn't that I didn't talk to her. I just didn't want to. This sounds terrible, but I felt I shouldn't have been this way. But I was going like, why are these people? I don't have time to entertain everybody that's coming up here. They were coming to try to help me, and it was like, I just want to crawl in my cave, you know? But Darren and I were with each other all day, every day. So, we communicated a lot and cried a lot. We cried all day, prayed all day.
Oh, man, your story is so inspiring, Larry.
It was not fun. But I learned a lot.
Yeah, you've got to get this book. You've got to get this book, Management Ways, not just if you're a business person trying to sharpen your business acumen, but real life mess. I think that's how you describe it.
It is a mess.
And the story of your daughter's in here.
It is in there. It's right in the very beginning.
There's some of you
because it was life-changing for me.
That need to hear this. You need to hear this. And you need to get this book. Where do they get your book, Larry? Amazon?
It's on Amazon. They can go to my website,
okay.
LarryO'Donnell.com.
LarryO'Donnell.com.
I also have lots of videos that I've done. I teach a Bible study on the New Testament. I almost have the entire New Testament recorded on there. So there are a lot of
my goodness.
There are a lot of Bible studies I'm aware of around the country that they don't have anybody that feels qualified to teach it. So they'll say, let's study the Gospel of Matthew. And they just listen to the podcast. I just go chapter by chapter through each book and explain it. So that's out there. And I also write a blog every week that's sort of mainly geared on servant leadership. What I want to say, because I think you were about to go there, I started out writing the book about leadership, like business leadership.
Yes.
That's really, I feel like, the ministry that God wanted me to focus on. But the more I practiced and tried to understand how Jesus wants to live our lives as servant leaders, these principles apply to every single relationship. It isn't just business. It's colleagues, friends, family, spouse. Every single one of these, I have found that when you put them into practice in every single relationship, they're game changers. I mean, who would you rather be married to? Who would you rather work with? Who would you rather have as a boss? Who would you rather have as a friend? Somebody that you think is just kind of using you, or somebody that you can tell they care about you and want the best for you all the time.
Love that. Get this book.
So that kind of servant leadership, it's me being the servant and God being the leader.
Love it. Wonderful man came up to me, high capacity man, brilliant mind, businessman. He said, I want to go into ministry. I said, well, great. Let me pray for you. So I, Lord, bless this great man. Help him to go into ministry. I said, amen. And I looked at him, he looked at me, he was disappointed. And I said, are you okay? He said, yeah, I want to be a minister. I said, well, let me pray for you. He said, you just did that. I want to be a minister. I said, well, oh, you mean you want to leave the place where you have maximum influence and come work for a nonprofit, a church? You want to derive your career from a church? He said, yeah. I said, oh, because if you want to be a minister, you don't need to leave where you're at. You're ministering right there. You're having more impact. You don't need to leave that incredible position God has placed you. Unplug yourself to come work for a church. You're ministering right now. How important, Larry, is it for men and women who rise in rank to lead companies, understand they're pastoring, they're ministering. You don't need to unplug and work for a church.
You don't.
You're ministering right there. What was that like for you?
I felt every position God put me in through my crazy career, God had me there. That was my ministry. He wanted me there for a reason. And I believe that He has all of us where He wants us. Not only our careers, but our relationships with our friends, with our family, with our colleagues. Jesus' plan, as wild as it is, He came here, lived a perfect life for 30 years, poured into His disciples for 3 years, and then left it with them.
Goodbye.
He said, I'm gone. I'm leaving it with you. I'm leaving it with you guys. And so now, fortunately, He gave us the Holy Spirit, so it's not us. So we've got His power living in us to help us if we'll just be available and allow it to happen.
Yes.
And He wants us to be His feet and hands and, go out and communicate the gospel and help others obtain, get a personal relationship and mature in that relationship with Jesus so that they can be saved.
What about the firewall of faith and career? How did you handle navigating those two worlds?
I didn't have any problem with it throughout my career. I never had a problem. I'll just give you some examples. One thing I tried to do is really get to know people on a personal basis at all levels of the company. It wasn't just people who reported to me. And remember, I wasn't always CEO, I wanted to get to know them so well that if they showed up at work and they kind of looked like something was up, I would recognize it.
Okay.
And then I would go to them and I'd go, hey, Charlie or Mary, looks like something's really bothering you today. Man, is there anything I can do to help, or you want to talk about it, or can I pray for you? And a lot of times when I'd say, can I pray for you? They look at like we're at work. We can't pray at work. And I always tell them, look, I don't want to make you feel uncomfortable. I never wanted to make anyone feel uncomfortable. But believe it or not, I never had anyone refuse me to pray with them. I tell them, look, if you want, I'll go down the hall and pray. If you'll tell me what it is, I'm happy to pray for you. And they go, no, I'd really appreciate that.
Wow.
And it might have been right then, might have been the next day, next week, next month. They'd come seek me out and they go, Larry, there's something different about you. We're aware of your daughter because you talk about her all the time. And you've been through a lot, and yet you have this peace about you. Where does that come?
Yeah.
There's my opportunity.
Let
me tell you about Jesus, what Jesus has done to help me in my life.
So you would encourage people in upper management to not be afraid.
Yes.
But what about the fear climate that's in our country? They're like, don't talk about that here. You say, go for it?
That's Satan.
So go for it.
Absolutely. Why? Okay. God has you there for a reason. And don't do anything that's going to get you fired. I'm not telling. I don't want everybody sending me a note and say, now I don't have a job. you can do it in a loving
Yes,
and
you
tactful
can.
way.
Mhm.
And like, don't make people uncomfortable with it.
Right.
But when you're real and people know you really care about them, they want to share things with you, and they want to ask, what is that about you?
Right.
And I had opportunities all the time. I hate to think back on how many opportunities I was too busy at the time and I let go. I'm not looking forward to that part of my performance review. It's not salvation. I'm 100% sure I'm going to heaven.
Yeah, you
but
are.
we're all going to have to stand in front of
We
Jesus
are.
and talk about,
Judgment seat.
what did we do with our opportunities
Yeah,
and gifts that
man,
he gave us? And there are a few I'm sure I passed by. I was too busy. I had other things that had to get done, and
Yeah.
I hate that.
But God, He brings it back around
That's
to you,
right.
and He'll give you another chance at it,
Yep.
and you'll get it right the next time.
Hopefully so.
Sometimes you have to repeat the course.
That's correct. That's correct.
I love this clean acronym, CLEAM. Commitment, listening, empathy, accountability, notice.
Yes.
I think the one that just touched my heart, though, is the loneliest job in the world, chapter 6. The loneliest job in the world. And that's under the heading of accountability. What does that mean?
It's being at the top can be very lonely because who do you have to talk to?
Right.
You know, when you're trying to sort out something, or there's a big issue you're dealing with. Well, you can't go talk to the people who report to you right off the bat. You got to
Right.
get their input. But at the same time, you don't want to roll out a bunch of stupid stuff that hadn't been thought through. And so, to me, I've been very blessed. I've always, throughout my career, had a business mentor and a spiritual mentor. Sometimes it was the same person, sometimes it wasn't.
Yeah.
But I think everybody ought to have that. That's why professional athletes all have coaches.
Right.
It's somebody, and even when you're CEO, you still have a boss. That's your board. So I wouldn't want to go in front of my board without having really thought out, okay, how are we going to deal with this? So having a mentor is somebody that you can, bounce ideas off of.
Mm-hmm.
You're not looking to them for answers. The best mentors I had never gave me an answer. They gave me lots of questions.
And let you discover it.
They let me. Sometimes they didn't even know my business, but they were seasoned enough to ask me questions that would cause me to think more deeper about possible solutions and arrive at the right answer. So it was kind of like a place that it's very safe, penalty-free environment, and you can bounce ideas off of and work things out before you either go roll it out to your team or to your boss, your board. I just found it to be so valuable. And on the spiritual side, when everybody goes through really tough times. And when you have a spiritual mentor that you can go and say, man, just pour it out on them and say, God, what should I do? Or what am I doing? Pray with me. They can kind of get you back pointed on the right path.
Yes.
I just found that to be very, very helpful throughout my career. And so that's what it's about.
I love it.
It doesn't have to be lonely.
Doesn't have to
But
be.
most people at the top are very lonely.
I agree. Have you ever thought about running for president?
No way. I'll do anything God wants me to, but
What if He wants you to do?
I'm very happy with the ministry He's given me.
We're in a. I wish I could talk you into that, Larry. Oh man, I'd love to keep you here for another hour, but
Well, yeah, I'll
I've
come
got
back
to
if
be
you want me sometime.
a good steward
Want
of
me
your
to.
time. Man, this book is incredible. Get this book.
Thank you.
Everybody get this book. Management Waste. Wow.
By the way, I did not write the book to make money. I'm delighted you're promoting it. All the proceeds go to charity. I do not make any money on the book. I give them away.
You sure did.
So
We're having a huge, big men's meeting where you're going to be speaking, and you're giving all the men a book.
I give them to people. I charge so little for them, even on Amazon, is to cover the postage. So yeah.
Thank you.
I wrote it to help people. God put it on my heart to share with others some of the struggles I went through, and some places I got it right, and a lot of places I got it wrong. And I'm not saying I am the master servant leader at all. There were too many times I wanted to be somebody rather than to be a servant.
Oh, that's
but I
good.
learned from that.
You're an example for me and so many others. You have touched so many people's lives.
I appreciate you saying
I
that.
thank you for your life. It's a gift to the world.
Well, God's blessed me, and even through the tragedy with my daughter, I look back on that, and it's clear that she is exactly how He wanted her to be. And there are times that I go, gosh, what if she was a cheerleader? What if she was, I was having grandkids now, but then I realize I'm just being selfish. That's God's plan. And she's going to be there with me. We're going to be together in eternity, and it's all going to be great. And she's brought more joy and probably had more of an impact on people and their faith than I ever will.
Oh, goodness, Larry. Well, your ability to see that is incredible. Must just be the grace of God in your heart, the Holy Spirit that
No doubt.
allows you to see it that way. Beautiful. Well, will you come back on another
Be delighted
episode
to, anytime.
Okay, because this is just like part one. I want to jump into how you went from being a Catholic to a Protestant, but we'll save that. We got to save something.
Okay.
And then there's other
delighted.
stories I haven't been able to talk you into sharing with me yet. Maybe on
No.
maybe episode 2.
I can't tell you everything. There's got to be a mystique,
Yeah, got to be. Well, you're a great man, Larry. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Bless you.
It's pleasure's all mine.